Okay, so I am ready to measure the colorimetry, measure the absorbance of my solutions. I have some solutions made, and one is the strong, one is the dilution, and I'm going to measure the absorbance in my colorimeter. My colorimeter, if I have this little side thing, it's got a little hole on it. Note that the hole also has a little triangle indicating that this is the way the light is going. On my cuvettes, I have a side with clear windows and I have a side with ribbed windows. I want to make sure that the ribbed windows, the clear windows are lined with that little triangle arrow. So I want it to go in like that. Okay, and then when I'm finished, I would shut the door. On the other end, it's got a USB port that gets plugged into the computer. Let's look at what we need to do on the computer. Okay, I want to start this vernier graphical analysis. You can either have this plugged in before or afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in the USB port after I get this in. Right now, it doesn't see any sensors. Hopefully it recognizes that I just plugged in. So it recognized when I plugged in, and now it brings it up. Note that in the lower corner, I see where it says the absorbance. I can just read the absorbance here, or it's a little easier if we click on this little block icon and I change it over to meter. It's going to show me my absorbance nice and big. That's going to be helpful. You can use this in collection mode if you've already calculated the concentrations and collect them and make a graph of it, but you can also make a graph in a spreadsheet, which is how we're going to do it. Okay, let's go back and focus on setting things up. I'm going to get this where you can see it a little better. All right, so I have my colorimeter. At this point, I don't know, it has 4 different wavelengths, and I don't know which wavelength this particular solution dissolves best at. This is my stock solution, so I'm going to use my stock solution to just define what is the wavelength that it absorbs best at. For this part, we will use 2 cuvettes. Normally, we use 1 cuvette because this cuvette is not quite the same as this cuvette. I don't want to introduce extra error, right? I want to have fewer variables. So once I do the second part, I'm going to stick with the same cuvette, and I'm not going to empty solutions out. That's how I'll do it in the second part. For now, I'm going to put my stock solution in one, and I'm going to put water in the other. I want to fill it up. Not all the way to the top, but pretty close. 3/4 of the way at least. I can put the little cap on. So I'm making one with water. I need water to be kind of my control. I want to wipe down the sides with a Kim wipe or with a with some little alcohol wipes. So I make sure I've got nice clear windows. So I'm holding the rib sides so I don't get fingerprints on the other sides, and I'm just wiping them down to make sure. It almost looks like I have an air bubble here. Let me dump back and forth. There's actually a defect where there's a hole in here, so I'm not going to use this cuvette. Let me grab another one. Anything that's going to obscure the light passing through would not be a good plan. So I wipe down the clear sides. So I take my water blank, I'm going to put it in there with the clean sides. I'm going to put it in there so that the rib sides are, the clear sides, the arrow is pointing through the clear sides. I'm going to make sure it's on the one, I'm using the starting with 430 nanometers. And I need to calibrate it or zero it with the water. So my absorbance should, right now my absorbance is not exactly 0, but I'm going to hit cal, and it takes a little while. I'm waiting for the red dot to stop showing, and it might be a couple seconds. So now the red light has stopped showing. So now I see the absorbance is reading 0. That's exactly what I want. Now I can move it. I don't really care about the waters. I just needed to zero it with this wavelength. I've now taken my stock solution, my strongest concentration solution, and put it into the cuvette. I want it almost up to the top. I'm going to add a top. I'm going to clean the sides, the clear sides, and turn it. Okay, now I leave it in there and I want to wait till it stops moving. So for this solution at 430, I get 0.42. I'm going to record at 430 nanometers, it reads 0.42. But maybe that's not the best. This looks like this wavelength would work, but it might not be the best wavelength. So I'm going to change the wavelength to another wavelength. But once I change the wavelength, I have to re-zero it with water. So I take this cuvette out, I put the water cuvette back in, close it up, and now it looks like it does read 0, but I'm going to recalibrate it just to be clear. And the red light stopped blinking, so it's done. I open it up, and now I'm going to take my stock solution, and I'm going to see what it reads at this one. Note that this is significantly higher. This is at 470 nanometers, and this one happens to be significantly higher. So I would record down 470 nanometers, 1.10 or 11. It wouldn't matter either one. Absorption. I'd say 1.11. Now I'm going to try the next wavelength. Just got my fingers on the clean side, so I'm going to wipe it off. I move the wavelength using the arrow key until it's reading 565 nanometers. I want to calibrate it with my water in there. Wait till the red light stops blinking. And now I remove that and I put in my stock solution so I can record what it reads at this one. So I have a little bit, but this is not as high as 1.11. So at 565 nanometers, the absorbance is 0.30. I have one more wavelength left, and maybe it's the highest. So I put my water in, I change the wavelength. Now it's on 635 nanometers. I hit cal, I wait for it to stop blinking. I check that it's reading 0 as it should be. Okay, stop blinking. And now it's on 0, good. And now I remove it and I put my stock solution in. And I'm gonna wait for this one to stop. This one's not very good. So note that I have an absorption of 0.08. So my highest absorption on this particular solution happened to be at the 470 nanometers. So I want to repeat the 470 nanometers. Now at this point, I can go back to 470 nanometers. Since I've already got my water and my stock, I can measure. I want to calibrate it on the water. Now that I'm switching solutions, I want to calibrate it on the water. Wait till it stops blinking. And I'm going to record that with the water, I want to record that I'm using 470 nanometers. I want to record that the absorbance of the water solution, which is 0 molarity, is 0.00. I record that in my notebook. Now at this point, this is the cuvette I want to use because this is what had the water in. So at this point now I want to redo everything with just this cuvette. It shouldn't change, hopefully. Uh-oh. I just put the water instead of it. I thought this was my waste. This is my stock. Do I have any left? Well, we're going to use this. I have some more stock over here. So I take my stock solution. I put a little bit in the cuvette, and I rinse. and I rinse it into my waste. Now, this is more of my stock. Don't confuse your stocks. And if you're not good at pouring, you can use a pipette and pipette it in. Put the top on. I'm going to wipe down the sides. So this is my stock solution. I'm going to add that in. I'm thinking it should be about 1.11 because it was when I did it with the other cuvette, but it might change. Look, this one's 1.17. So apparently this cuvette has a tiny bit of difference, and that's the importance of why you want to use the same cuvette. So I'd record down that that the stock solution is 1.17. And I'm going to do this now. I'm going to repeat this process for my other solutions, for those diluted concentration solutions that we made. So I dump out the cuvette into my waste. And now I have my prepared dilution. This is, I'm going to say dilution number 2. I want to put a little bit in. Sometimes it doesn't come out of these very easily. All right, I'm going to use a pipette. So I have a dry pipette. It's not coming out. These are small. I suck up some. And I'm going to rinse with this one. So I'm rinsing the cuvette so that if there was any remnant of the other solution, it's out. I dump that rinse into the waste beaker. And now I want to fill it up with the solution. No, in this particular case, now that I picked my maximum wavelength, I'm not changing the wavelength anymore. I'm just changing which solution I'm measuring. Put the top on. Clean the sides. A lot of times when you're cleaning, changing out the solution of the pipette, of the cuvette, it gets dirty on the sides, drippings. So wipe it off. Make sure the clear side is aligned with the arrow. Close it. So I would record dilution number 1. If I knew its concentration, I would write down its concentration next to it. You should know the concentration, but maybe you haven't quite calculated it yet. And I record that the absorbance is, it's going back and forth, but it's going 0.49, 0.50. I'll say 0.50. So I would record 0.50 for dilution number 1 in my notebook. And now I'd change out the cuvette to dilution number 2 until I've measured the absorbance of all the solutions. And then I will be able to make my calibration curve from that.